Okay, new year, new 2+1 year anniversary, new episode, new revision of an existing episode. There is much to rant about the motherboard designs. We did an episode almost 2 years ago about this, episode 13 or something, and we think that it's a time that we create a part two. So, without further ado, let's roll the intro and let's start chatting and ranting. Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
Did the New Year resolutions, broke them, and now we are ready to work?
How did you break them?
By ignoring them, basically.
Did you actually had some?
Not really, but it sounds good to have a New Year resolution. So I was lying to people that I decided on things, then I decided that I'm not going to do anything. Anyways, why do you want to rant about the motherboards? Because I want to interject with one simple thing. The thing that I hate about motherboards right now is the size.
We can have a chat about that as well.
No, the thing is that I'm going to be pretty simple about this. The thing that I want to do with old computers is to repurpose them to do something else. Having an ATX full-size motherboard is extremely painful when you need to buy a case for something that is going to be a single-use computer. So I would like for every motherboard to be mini ATX, if possible.
How about we do an episode about that?
Yes, it is possible, but this is my biggest gripe with the motherboards right now.
Okay, I have many, I'm afraid.
Okay.
And they come off. They kind of come from the last episode that we did, and basically some 20 months after we did that one, and after 2 additional generations of motherboards, the things are basically still the same. And it goes without saying that being the same is as annoying as it was almost 2 years ago. More to the point, it might be actually even more. Let's say. Prone to being ranted at.
I'm going to go with, although that I think that we are influential influencers, I don't think that since we did the last episode, ASUS and the guys decided to change the motherboard layout just because we ranted about those.
That is quite possible, but that being said, we should still keep on harping about it because what all of them are doing just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, let me start with one specific motherboard that I want to talk about. Because since we were last doing something about the motherboards, I actually wanted to create a local NAS.
ASRock, okay.
ASRock Extreme 11, X99.
Yeah, I know.
So it's 2011-3 socket LGA. And the thing that why this motherboard is interesting to me is because it has 18 SATA ports.
Yes, that's the only reason why it's interesting.
Yes, this is the only reason why it's interesting. But at the same time, this is the actual reason why I wanted to get this board. And I think that I'm going to get it in the next week or so. Because this is the thing that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a motherboard that is cheap because it's old. Mm-hmm. It can be bought new, so it can actually have some sort of warranty. Processors for it are basically free.
Okay.
And it is capable of doing what I need to do, and this is just run a bunch of old disks that I have lying around. So 18 disks is going to be much more of a problem when it comes to a case than this motherboard is going to be to support it.
Please stop talking about the next episode.
No, but this is the motherboard that I like, and this is what I want to talk about the motherboards, because you say that you want to rant about motherboards. I want to say I decided to give up on the designers of motherboards because they don't care about users, and I'm just going to point out different extremely useful, in this case extremely 11, motherboards
extremely 11 useful
that have some specific purpose in its life and that makes them useful for today's work.
Okay, I mean X99 is 10, 11 years old.
Yes.
And this is a PCI Express 3
Yes.
chipset. I like the fact that it has 12G SAS, but still, I'm talking about much more contemporary motherboards. So let me do my part, and then you re-rent, and then we're going to talk about your part, and then I'm going to re-rent. Let's organize it that way.
Okay, just go on.
So 2 years ago, something like 2 years ago, and a couple of maybe a month or so more, I bought a 12900K based system, which I still use to this very day, based on Asus Z790 motherboard, so Intel based. After that, a couple of months after that, you bought your 13700K or something like that. And you also had Ryzen on the side, which you upgraded to a newer Ryzen, so all of that's beautiful. And a month ago or so, you started playing with Epic as well in one of the systems, which is an overkill and a half, but that's a topic for, let's say, a later date. The first thing that I want to discuss, yet again, is going to be related to the pricing, but not necessarily in a way in which I presented it the last time around. Specifically, when we are talking about the pricing of the system, if you are, let's say, assembling a new system from scratch, let's say that you have no parts whatsoever, there is a huge chance for the vast majority of users, now I'm not talking about gamers for a second, the motherboard is probably going to be the biggest expense.
Okay.
For anybody who wants to do anything on top of just regular, typewriter machine, but without the gaming, and there are quite a few people that use their machines like that for looking at videos, scrolling the internet, whatnot. The basic motherboard pricing that kind of fulfills all of the necessary details is something like, let's say, $300 or euros. That's quite a bit of money. If you move towards the content creation market, where it's all about the expandability and Thunderbolt and USB 4 and USB 3.2 and all of those USBs that we rented about a couple of months ago, then that situation becomes completely not only unsustainable, it's insane. Most of the latest generation of the motherboards that I am at least mentioning today, something like, let's say, Z890 based motherboards by Gigabyte or by Asus, whatever, Aorus Master or UD or whatever, we are talking about 500 plus euro motherboards easily, even more so. And those motherboards still suffer from all of the problems that we mentioned in our 13th episode. They are still, for the most part, 2 or 3 PCI Express slot designs based on mostly 1, sometimes 2 PCI Express X16, which is rare. Mostly there are 2 times X8 if both of them are used at the same time. And then if there are any spare or leftover PCI Express slots, they're usually X1. If you are very, very lucky, it's X4.
Okay.
But X4 as an idea is almost like it has almost disappeared from the motherboard as such. Mostly it's X16 or again 2 slots 2 times X8, and then on top of it maybe X1. There are almost no motherboards with X4 anymore, at least as a dedicated slot. That situation changes if you move up to the next, let's say, a part of the market, which would be workstation motherboards. The TRX50s, the WRX systems, the things that you have some experiences with as well, because you work for a company that uses some of the Epics and whatnots. Problem being that those motherboards start around 900 euros or something like that, 950.
Okay.
They do have a boatload of whatever you want in terms of the expandability, in terms of the USBs and Thunderbolts and whatnot, and on the PCI Express side. Now, because of the fact that you were smart enough to mention this ASRock motherboard, I would also like to point out, and this was not prearranged, this is just something that kind of like it was a spur of the moment thing for you. I would like to mention that this motherboard has 5 PCI Express slots.
Yes.
Okay, and this is a 10 plus years old motherboard. And you could run, stuff like 4-way SLI, which is dead, 4-way Crossfire X, which is also dead. But more to the point, 5 of these slots, as the specification states on ASRock's website, are PCI Express 30 X16. There is a bridge chip somewhere there because chipset doesn't support as many PCI Express lanes, but that's beside the point. For content creators, this kind of motherboard nowadays would be a godsend if they had something like this, albeit with a little bit more latency if there was a bridge chip involved somewhere. But for content creators, if you're working with multi-camera setups, if you are doing that via a PCI Express card, we have a system like that as well. We are not using it all that much, but we do have it. X8 or X4, depending on the number of cameras, is mandatory. You cannot do that black magic, quad decklink, whatever the card is called, or something similar to that, without at least, I don't remember if it's X4 or X8 PCI Express, something to that effect. X1 is not going to work, not enough bandwidth. When I look at the designs themselves, they are largely the same. It's all about the U around the socket, the memory on the side. Some of the latest generation of motherboards have that different type of memory, which is going to be a topic of some future episode because things are somewhat changing on the x86 market. We are getting more and more into these hybrid designs similar to M1, M2, M3, M4 for some of the new generations of the CPUs, and for at least on the technical marketing papers, for stability of memory, which has been a problem for quite a while now for multiple generations of chipsets and CPUs. They're trying to kind of solve that problem by going in a completely opposite direction, which not everybody is going to like. I'm sure about that one as well. What is severely lacking on most of these motherboard models, and I checked MSI and ASRock and Asus and Gigabyte and whatnot, only the higher end ones tend to have USB 4. Thunderbolt is mostly done. Now we are kind of converging towards the USB 4 for the future, which is fine by me. But most of these motherboards that I mentioned, apart from the, let's say, 500-600 euros plus ones, whatever the segment of the market is, they don't even have USB 4. It's all USB 3.2 if you're lucky. And that's the top of the game. And again, if you're lucky, maybe one X16, which I understand that now, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, the GPU manufacturers moved towards the idea of a single card, not to run multiple cards in a system, which was a prevalent model, at least on the marketing side, if nothing else, for the 10 years before that, SLI Crossfire that I mentioned earlier. But still, there are various use cases in which the bandwidth of the PCI Express slots is going to be a very important factor. One of them, because of the fact that NVIDIA basically canned all of the Quadro NVS graphic cards, which were the choice for professionals when you needed multi-output type of setups with 4, 8 setups, NVS 8, 10, and whatnot. Those cards don't exist anymore. And most of the regular graphic cards are capped at, let's say, 4 outputs or something like that. There are
usually 4 or 5, yes.
4, maybe 5, depending on the model, but it's more an exception than the rule. And if you need to have, I don't know, if you want to have a workstation for Forex trading or something like that, you're going to eventually end up in a situation in which you're going to probably have 2 graphic cards inside so that you have plenty of HDMI and DisplayPort connectivity. And the same goes for the content creators, because for us, the amount of monitors is the bread and butter of the use case, because we require multiple monitors so that we can do our plugins and our setups and our captions and our montage processes and applications, whatever it may be. So I would actually say that because of the fact that they didn't move motherboard manufacturers in any shape or form towards what we were discussing in our episode 13, I think that the situation right now can be described as worse.
I think that since now you got your 15-minute rant about motherboards, without any conclusions...
Plenty more to come.
Without any conclusions, I might say, is that I think that you are completely missing the point.
Okay.
In the last year or so, I was carefully watching people who are doing professional things on the PC. So I was talking with a few developers, high-end developers. I was talking with a few modelers, a few designers, and so on. And what I noticed is that the content creator that you are talking about actually does not exist. Most of them, if they are actually, I don't know, 3D modelers, they now prefer to go back to one monitor setup. Because
Okay.
what they
One
do,
big monitor?
one huge monitor, but one monitor setup. Because they want a 4K monitor, they want it to be as big as possible, and they don't want anything else on the table. They want to have a clean setup with them.
Why?
I don't really know why, but I think this is a combination of being tired of having the entire disk dominated by monitors, and also having a good enough setup for everything that they're doing, because they want to focus on one monitor. It is fine to have a separate place for brushes, for the plugins and whatever, but the thing is that usually people don't do this. When they're doing 3D modeling, they know what they're trying to do, they know the shortcuts, they don't need the menus, so they want a single huge image to work on. And this is the thing that is usually what they're asking for. The developers are a different thing. They usually sticking to two monitor setups, because they want to have the primary monitor as a place where they're doing the development.
Every single developer that I know of has at least 3 monitors.
Okay, but every single
And
developer...
vertical ones are very popular.
Yes, vertical monitors are very popular, but every single developer that I know usually has two. One is a primary monitor with a huge monitor to be able to work on, and the second one for the documentation, references, and everything else, because they don't want to switch. I think that the thing that has changed is the size of the monitor dictates how the workflow looks like, because people don't like to look around. They don't like to need to have the field of view of, I don't know, 1.5 meters in front of them, because they don't want a square meter of monitor space. They just want to be able to focus on a single thing, and this shouldn't be too big. So 32 or 36-inch monitors that are right now being used are something that are the norm, and then people just say, okay, I don't need a second monitor. But having said that, I have another thing to rant about, and I'm going to be quicker than you. This is the thing that is changing in the market, is that right now we have a regular motherboards, entry-level motherboards, professional motherboards, content creator motherboards, and workstation motherboards.
And
Aside
gaming.
from the
And gaming.
motherboards. Okay, these are the pro motherboards usually, because they don't like to call them games, so they like to call them pro gamers or just pro motherboards. And the thing that is bothering me is that why do we even think about having a creator motherboard? What is a creator motherboard?
What I just told you about.
No, but what is the difference between a pro gamer motherboard and a creator motherboard?
The amount of USB ports.
No, actually it's not. Actually,
It used to be.
It usually is right now the amount of M2 ports.
Okay, that's stupid.
So the thing that I'm looking at is associated with VS and ProArt Z890. And the workstation motherboard is a little bit more expensive, so something like $100. ProArt is something like $480, and the other is $590, I think, or something close to this. And the thing is that when you take a look at the specification, you can see that the created motherboard has more ports when it comes to M2. And at the same time, it has Thunderbolt 5, which the workstation motherboard doesn't have. And I would expect that creating content would be a part of workstation, because usually the workstations were the ultimate machines for creating content. So for video editing, audio editing, and everything else. So why is there a separate thing that is a creator motherboard? And the thing that it is lacking is any kind of remote control. So the workstation motherboard has BMC and everything else. The creator motherboard doesn't have anything.
I don't know if I sent you a link, but there is some kind of a project right now. I think they actually finished it. It's not the
JKVM.
No. Something else. It's a PCI Express X1 card that offers basically BMC functionalities for all of the motherboards. I saw that somewhere last week. I don't know if I've sent you the link. I think I didn't. I'm going to dig up that specific post which I saw, and maybe we could try to getting that card.
I ordered Jet KVM.
Yeah, I know
KVM
about that one.
It's promising to be the most useful KVM solution right now in the market if they are able to ship. Because what I'm always looking for as a warning sign is when there is any sort of crowdfunding campaign that is trying to raise something like, in their particular case, $50,000, and then end up raising $2 billion. It usually means that they're going to become out of the debt. But from the things that I have heard and what the things that I have seen, they started shipping. So it is looking promising.
I'm looking at one of the gigabyte motherboards for the content creators, the 790 ARG. It has 5 M2 slots. Only 2 of those are from the chipset. This is a topic that needs to be covered somewhere in the future episode as well, because that's actually the limitation that kind of like it's like a snowball rolling down the hill. It forces us into all of these compromises which we have with PCI Express slots and whatnot. But a topic for another day. 3 of those slots are served from the chipset, and it has just let me check. I think 4 or 3 PCI Express slots. As we said in one of the previous episodes, the websites of the motherboard manufacturers require. I think they should be burned down and started from scratch. They are completely unreadable. Because of all of the jumps that they do automatically for you and whatnot, not something that most of us need. But in terms of the PCI Express, it has one PCI Express X16, and then 2 more, which are X4. And that motherboard also is marketed as a content creator motherboard, and it's probably 700-800 euros, or maybe even more.
But going back, you were talking about 700 euros motherboard. I'm talking about a 500 euro motherboard that actually has 2 PCI 5 X16 slots,
cool.
5 M2 slots for the drives, 10G network connection, and it actually makes sense from the usage perspective. Okay, it's Marvell 10G, so your mileage may vary, even your feet may vary when it comes to Marvell, but it is a motherboard that at least on paper actually works. The thing that is a little bit bothersome for me is that under operating system it says Windows 11, 22H2 and later. No Windows 10, nothing else. So I'm expecting huge problems with
Windows 10 or something.
Any driver.
Okay, going back to something that you mentioned earlier, you mentioned 30-plus inch monitors. You do realize that that's basically rolling back the years back to, let's say, 2006 or 7, something like that. This is where the 30-inch monitors started. Yes. I have 2 of those from that era on my wall, the Dell and the HP one, which were the 2 of the most popular ones. They still work, but they were heavy as shit, and they are really huge and very very fat in terms of technology nowadays is better and whatnot. But I was never very comfortable using those monitors, coming from somebody who actually used them for years. These were for 2 separate computers for test benches and whatnot, but also I used them at home as a primary monitor for my PC. Both of them are 2560 x 1600. That resolution on 30-inch, I don't know, was never the most comfortable to use for me, although I used it heavily. Full HD standard resolution is way too big. Every icon is like a potato on the screen because the screen is very big. I'm not sure that this is something that's going to last. That's my conclusion about the monitor size. I don't think this is going to last because at the end of the day, at least from my perspective, that's not as ergonomic as multiple monitors can be. I'm with you on this, on the playing ping pong on the screens. I understand what you're saying. I completely agree with you. And I agree that having 3+, 4+ monitors is not necessarily a standard use case. We have it, but that doesn't mean that it's a standard thing. but I still find that my 5-monitor setup is much more comfortable than having 2 super wide monitors. And I tried working with those Samsung, very wide monitors that were released a couple of years ago. I don't know. It's not for me.
I had the latest generation LG ultra wide monitor, and the thing is that it works. It works when you need to type something. When doing something, it is just wide enough so you can actually have 2 texts side by side on the same monitor.
Yeah, it's basically
Windows.
two times
Yes.
HD resolution. Yes.
So basically, it's useful when you need to do something, if you need to do something. But when you try to have multiple applications running and you want to have an overview of them, I think multi-monitor setup is always going to be the better one.
There are 2 other problems with this setup that you're discussing. If we are discussing that setup, first and foremost, if you have a monitor arm,
Yes.
monitor arm means that you have an actual arm, which means that it has a central like metal rod and then arms on it. What you want to do with that setup is you want to have it mounted on the central metal rod, which you cannot do. Most of the monitor arms do not support it. You have to mount it left or right, which means that you're going to waste a lot of disk space in horizontal direction. But even worse, if you don't put that monitor on an arm, then it's very deep.
The thing is that I actually got it a little bit cheaper because there was no version that had a stand. I got it with an arm. The default configuration only had the arm installed. So I wasn't able to even mount it using a stand. I had to use the arm that came with the monitor itself.
Which makes it pretty chunky in terms of depth.
Yes, but it works. Because none of the arms that we have are meant for wide monitors. So there is no space for those. If you put it side by side to another monitor, you're going to have a huge problem with the depth. So what I did is I combined 3 different arms.
Basically, the solution to that problem would be mounting it to a wall to a VESA stand if it supports VESA, which not all of them support, by the way.
Or just simply spending 300 euros on different stands and experimenting to see which one works.
No, thank you. I don't want to do that ever again. So 30 plus inch monitors, I'm not sure, but okay. I'm willing to try again.
I'm inclined to go with the solution that is going to actually involve rails that are going to be horizontal rails to hang the monitors on. The way that they're usually
TV-based stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing that I'm going to probably use. Since I want my monitor to be affixed to the table, I don't want it on the wall. And the reason is because I'm using a standing desk. So I want my monitors to be able to go up and down with the desk itself. And this creates another set of problems. But let's go back to the motherboards because we are not talking about the monitors anymore.
Okay. Did you actually check any of the? Did you consider buying a new or upgrading your existing computers in the past year or so?
No.
Me neither, which makes it a little bit easier to discuss this topic because it was only today that I went through some of the motherboards that came out in the past couple of years after I assembled my setup, which conversely is very close to when you did your setup, so it doesn't bother me as much. But from a standpoint of somebody looking into this, it's still quite annoying. So, for example, I'm looking at previously I discussed Intel-based motherboards. Now I'm talking about AMD-based motherboards. So X870 or 870E, whatever chipset you want to look at. They are basically made in the same manner as in which the Intel-based motherboards are made. They have 2 to 3 slots, same ideas, X1, one of them X16, whatnot. Oftentimes they don't have Thunderbolt or USB 4. That's from what I saw so far a little bit more of a problem with AMD-based systems than with Intel. My prevalent experience with, and I did test a couple of motherboards after I assembled my computer. A lot of AMD and Intel-based motherboards still suffer problems with memory. There are quite a few.
Yes.
Memory timing problems when you boot it the first time with the new memory sticks. Actually are, in my experience, worse on AMD than they are on Intel. It usually reboots 10 times until it does the memory timing configuration. And whatnot.
As someone who was trying to upgrade the memory from 32 to 64 gigs on DDR5, I must say that I much prefer the AMD version where it reboots 10 times than the Intel version when it doesn't boot, and then you need to reconfigure the memory without the memory being inside the machine. So reconfigure the memory before you put it in the machine, and then let it boot, and then hope if it's going to boot under a minute, because it doesn't show anything while it's trying to refigure the memory. So when I first tried it, I was completely... I thought that the memory itself was faulty.
Yeah.
It took me a minute and a half to get the machine to boot. And by boot, I mean just show a single screen.
Yeah, BIOS screen.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's exactly the reason why when I was assembling my 12900K system, it wasn't, 2 days after the launch. I did let the launch pass and waited for a month or two. I checked the information online from people who actually went and became early adopters, or as we call them, beta testers nowadays. Most of them were complaining about the memory issues, especially if you were looking into having all 4 DIMM slots used by memory. It was practically a no-go. And there are still huge issues with that, both on Intel and AMD. It doesn't really matter if it's Intel or AMD. On DDR5, it's quite problematic. Hence the reason why, out of the box, when I was assembling the system, I went with 2x32 memory configuration, because 64 gigabytes for me on desktop was enough. If I were to expand it to 128 for some whatever godforsaken reason, I would first check if the motherboard supports 2x64. I would not try to go quad memory sticks, because that usually doesn't work. Still, that's my experience.
Let's now talk about an asterisk problem.
Asterisk problem.
You are on the specification of a motherboard, whatever the motherboard is.
I know what you're talking about.
Go to the tech specification itself.
If I find it, yes. Okay.
Now press Ctrl F and search with asterisk.
Yeah, I know.
How many of those do you have?
44.
60.
You win. Okay.
This is the ROG Maximus Z790 Hero. The amount of side notes, footnotes, and notes in general that are trying to say, okay, we are not supporting whatever, and then one asterisk means refer to the documentation, and the other one may not be supported in some processors, and the fourth one, even the processors that are supported are not supported in full, is insane.
You know what this reminds me of?
I have absolutely no idea, but
you're gonna definitely remember. When we started our, let's say, PC assembly journey many moons ago, and a piece of that story is my retro PC as well. You're going to remember this. What was always the first thing that you did if you were hand assembling a computer? And I know for a fact that you did that at basically the same time period when I did it. I know that you had some SCSI motherboards. I know that you had some Celerons and slot ones and whatnot. What was the first thing that you did after you got all of the components from your favorite dealer, whichever that was, when you got home? What was the first thing that you did?
Threw all the documentation away.
No, you actually opened the documentation.
No, because it was later when I learned that without documentation for the motherboard, I'm going to be completely screwed.
You do remember what I'm talking about, when you had to configure the FSB, then the multiplier, then memory timings, then let's say enable or disable a sound card which was clashing with your AWE32 jumpers, but not
cables.
That was the era in which we paid very close attention to everything that was written in the user's manual of the said motherboard, especially, not necessarily in general for all of the motherboards, but if you went with early, let's say, SATA motherboards or the good old SCSI motherboards, it was a sure thing that you're going to look
what you're
into the
talking about is
documentation.
okay, but the thing is that...
But this reminds me of that. This is even worse.
No. This is worse in another way. Because back way then, if you had a single connector, and if this connector was hardware compatible to another connector, so for example, if you had an IDE drive, or you had the USB connector, if you had something, there was always a way to make it work. It could be involve incantations using RQ, jumpers, the throwing deep switches, and so on, but you could make it work. Today, it is normal for you to have a connector that doesn't work because it's not supported. It's not supported in your particular case. It doesn't support some sort of a disk, some sort of a cable, some sort of a drive, CPU, whatever. So you can actually have,
or you have some kind of a component that clashes with it out of the box, so it's just not working.
So, or you can have a Thunderbolt connector that is both USB and Thunderbolt, and at the same time doesn't work as either. So this is a thing that is bothering me. This is bothering me much more than the lack of some connections, because when I find a connection that I want to use, I want it to work. I need the connection for a reason. If I bought a motherboard that has 5 M2 slots, I don't want 3 of those to be used at the same time with the SATA slots, so that I cannot both use the SSDs that I have already at home and the new M2s. So this is one of those things where I say that the asterisk problem is there. Everything is right now a footnote. Every compatibility thing is now a footnote. You need to pay attention to a lot of things that are not going to be reconfigurable once you get the motherboard.
Can I go off on a tangent? This is completely in line with what you just said. It's very short. Prior to New Year's Eve, it's our favorite time of the year when we have a little bit of more time, maybe a little bit of vacation, and then you go and buy stuff because it's perfect, let's say, combination of those. I have a little bit of time and I want to spend some money, and at the end of the year you do some costs if you have a corporate entity, because it is a smart thing to do from the tax perspective, completely legal. My partner and I went and we bought a wireless printer.
Okay.
HP.
That is probably not wise, but okay, let's roll with it.
So we got home. I removed the old printer, put the new one in. Luckily, it was basically the same setup. So it has a Europa connector for power, USB, whatnot. It also has wireless. And then the party started, because that printer only has support for 802.11b.
Yes.
I cannot even begin to tell you how much that pissed me off. Basically, 802.11b for the listeners/viewers who are not necessarily as technical as we tend to be at times. That's the old 11 megabit per second wireless standard, which was prevalent in 2000, maybe even before that.
It can be pushed to 54 megabits.
No, B not. No, these chips cannot.
Okay, these chips, okay.
No. They are basically, spare leftover chips from either some reserve that was reserved for warranty, or they didn't know what to do with it. They had it on stock. They made a wireless module that uses it. Now, here's the caveat. I was lucky enough in terms of having a DSL router that supports dual band. So it does support G and B. So I was able to connect it. But I'm wondering if that's going to be the case, or always be the case. And that's another asterisk thing that you're mentioning. But this time, this wasn't an asterisk at all. It wasn't mentioned as an asterisk, which I think it should have been.
But you are completely forgetting, or you don't know that almost all the devices that are on the market right now that are not PCs are usually only supporting 802.11b. So all they are the doorbells, all the cameras, all the sensors, almost all of them are supporting strictly 802.11.4.
For what range reasons?
It's one thing is the range. I think the other reason is because they don't want to mess with the fiddly antennas, because they don't want to redesign everything, because it is they're considering it a problem, because a lot of RF design is required to make both B and G and eventually EC work. So what they're doing is they're sticking to this thing. The chips themselves are much easier to produce with the old technology.
They're cheap.
They're cheap. So when you are taking a look at any of the new Internet of Things solutions, they're usually only supporting the oldest possible Wi-Fi.
Yeah, but this is not IoT. This is not a sensor. This is a freaking printer. That is a home printer, and at home nobody uses 802.b. 802.11b. Nobody uses that.
Yes, but as I said, almost all of the almost all the cameras and the things that I have seen use those.
Basically, I was lucky that it had a bridge mode, the printer between B and G, so I was able to connect it, and it works beautifully, and that's all good. But it's just another type of asterisk problem which we'll find everywhere. So even
how much is subscription for the printer?
It has no subscription. Yeah, that's a good one. Even old farts like ourselves, we are really going to have to start checking for every single hardware component, all of the asterisks that are on the web page or documentation or whatnot, and heavily in advance. And even this information, actually, to HP's credit, was written on the packaging, on the packaging, outside packaging of the device. But I just could not be bothered to read that, probably just like most people don't. It was only when I started configuring it that I realized that this might be a problem. Luckily for me, it wasn't. Otherwise, it would be a completely pointless buy.
Yes, but the thing is that if you're looking for specific details about different things, you need to take into account that almost all the cheap devices are going to be cheap because of a reason. Mm-hmm. Wireless connectivity is going to be a reason. Bad connectors are going to be a reason. Bad slots in the motherboards are going to be a reason. Rubbish USB connectors are going to be a reason. So you are going to get a motherboard that is going to be cheap, but there is a reason why it is cheap. So I don't have a problem with this. I
do.
I understand that there is a problem and that they are trying to solve it. And the problem is that the motherboards themselves have become too expensive. So they need to save some money. The way they're doing it is bothersome. And I think that I would like to see in the bill of materials, when it comes to motherboard, how much of the materials themselves are the licenses. I would like to see how much the developers of the motherboards are spending on the license for different things. I suspect that it is the list is large, and the amount of money that they need to pay for each motherboard is huge compared to the motherboard price.
Now, going in a little bit of an opposite direction of what we discussed, still related to motherboards, servers.
Yes.
Today, if you want to have many X16 slots or something like that, you usually buy some kind of a server or something that's like workstation or whatnot. It's been like that for many years. But there's a caveat there as well. There is a caveat that is a bigger asterisk than all of the ones that we discussed so far, which is which PCI Express is connected to the CPU. Because this is something that you're going to have a hard time finding in the motherboard manual of the server, because there is no motherboard manual. You're going to have to go to the overall server manual if you're lucky enough to find that piece of information. It's not going to be in the technical specifications, most definitely, because this is something that actually plays a huge role in terms of how server performs in most of the server-based workloads. Because you want to have your, NVMe, you want to have it connected to the CPU, not to the chipset, stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is that this is not described in a humanly readable fashion in server documentation of any manufacturer. It doesn't really matter which one.
I think that
this is just an extension of this problem.
No, I'm going to go and completely ignore your point right now, because I want to do a separate episode on server motherboards and servers themselves, because the amount of information that right now vendors are doing about the servers and motherboards and configuration is so flagrantly slow, because they want to make money, is that it's almost impossible to get a server that is completely functioning without consulting, actually having a consultant. So it is extremely complicated to just go and say, okay, I need a server for, a database. How do I configure it?
And if you need something like SRIOV or something like that, you're going to have to do basically try test, shutdown,
Yes.
try test, because it's not written anywhere which slot supports it,
Or
stuff
it
like
is
that.
written in multiple places, and those places have completely different configurations. So, for example, if you're looking for, I don't know, is it compatible with a particular Mellanox card or whatever, there is going to be a hardware compatibility list that's going to say yes, it is, and then on the other compatibility list is going to say yes, it is, but. And then there is going to be a disclaimer that is going to say, okay, in this particular version, this is not compatible with this because of this.
Yeah, I've seen that happen as well. And some of the highly useful feature of the latest couple of generations of the motherboards, like PCI Express bifurcation. We had a chat about that in one of the previous episodes many moons ago. Bifurcation doesn't necessarily work on all of the motherboards, nor does it work on all of the servers. Both of us have motherboards that have additional PCI Express cards that could fit 2 or 4 NVMe disks. You have that 4 with the 4 NVMe's, I think. I gave you that one. I have one with PCI Express 5 and 4, so for 2 SSDs, which I use, but the motherboard does support it. That being said, there are multiple motherboard BIOSes that do not support it, although the chipset does support it and the CPU does support it. I've seen that happen as well. That's actually more to the point of something else that we discussed a couple of months ago, which is when the product hits the market and it's not really ready.
But I think that every product that is right now hitting the market is not ready anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
And the thing is that some of those products are not going to be ready at any point in time. They're just going to continue being in a let's say loosely beta, and they're going to be just another product that doesn't work correctly, or it works but it has a lot of problems. So while we were talking about, I just saw a bulletin by HP, which they say that they are covering something that, or they are mentioning that they're some of the servers are not supporting communication between NVIDIA cards and the server motherboard, so it is possible that it can corrupt the data that the card is sending to the memory. While the card is being booted up or shutting down. And they have a separate BIOS version that is solving this problem. I cannot imagine why and how this problem happened. But the thing is that...
there's a reason. PCI IDs and whatnot in the BIOS that deny functionality, whatnot, has been... It's been a thing for decades.
The thing is that... I was expecting, at least in the servers world, that you are going to see as few as possible BIOS updates to make things work. And this is beginning to become another problem. Let's go back to motherboards. Let's go grab your motherboard. Which motherboard are you using? At home, yes.
Z790.
I'm using also Z7, but I don't know which one.
It's 790 for sure, but I don't know which one you have. Z790.
I think mine is Prime. A Prime.
Okay, I'm going to find you a specific model. Just give me a second. I can check in my email because I sourced it from a local company.
No. But the thing is that I just want to go and see how many versions of BIOS do you have.
Oh, they have quite a few.
Yes, and this is one of those things where I'm getting hugely annoyed.
This is mine. ROG Republic of Gamers Maximus Z790 Hero.
Okay, so I'm extremely annoyed by the support and the amount of information that I need to get in order to get my motherboard working. Because as I said,
While you check,
790, it's easy. 790 Pro. Okay, and let me see how many configuration the BIOS and firmware versions are there. So right now my motherboard is running, or should be running a version 1805. and they started with version 4.11.
Check this.
Yes, I know.
All of these are biases. It has
No,
something like 15 biases.
No. It's all of these are biases. So from here.
I'm talking about my motherboard.
No, but take a look here. From here, this is the first bias they have, 4.11, and then all of these are biases up to the version 18.05. What I'm trying to tell is they are continuously sorting out problems.
19 versions.
So
for me,
they're continuously sorting out problems. Sometimes it's the difference between two biases is only 2 or 3 days, because they have critical problems, and this means that this motherboard is not stable. What they're doing is they're trying to quickly plug up the problems, but they are just pushing the biases one after the other.
style.
Yes, and this is a problem. This is a huge problem, because if I have a bias that is out, the date is 1710, and then the one is first 11. So the September and it is September and December, one after the other. I don't feel comfortable with the design that has this problem, especially if it says that we have updated the Intel microcode to address elevated voltage requests to mitigate the instability issues.
That's an Intel problem, not an Asus problem.
Yes, but this is the thing. I don't want problems like this. I don't want to address instability issues. Of course, they don't mention that this is going to involve slowing down your processor, because inevitably it is. But anyways...
And the upgrade process was funny. Also 3 or 4 reboots and whatnot.
Anyway, is there anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to motherboards?
I just want to mention one more thing related to that, and then we can finish this episode, which is I have vivid memories of old motherboards.
Yes.
From the yesteryear, after the appearance of internet. Even the old motherboards that I use nowadays for my retro PC and whatnot did not have more than 2 BIOS versions.
Yes,
2, 3. That's really like an exception to the rule. It's impossible. I remember some of the early Barton motherboards, like B6, B6-2 from Abit and whatnot, very, very popular motherboards for 2500 plus. Bartons had 2 or 3 BIOSes because they had that high point 66 megabyte per second IDE controller that needed a couple of BIOS updates to start working. But that being said, it's not something that was a thing.
I think this is a combination of Intel putting out buggy processors, motherboards not being ready for the prime or for the release it at all, and then everything else being a thing that needs to be patched. Because when it comes down to everything, the BIOS is the place where everything needs to be patched in order to work. So if they want to patch the microcode, this is the BIOS. If they need to patch the booting process, this is going to be the BIOS. If any device on the BIOS itself fails, motherboard itself fails, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, whatever, it needs to be in the BIOS. So they need to push the firmware, which is going to solve all the problems. And since they are sourcing from different manufacturers, and all the manufacturers have the same style of just put it out there products, the manufacturers of motherboards have no other recourse than to just keep pushing BIOSes and create automatical updates when it comes to BIOS.
Yeah.
And this is not something that I like.
No, me neither. It is what it is. I mean, the retro PC is based around the motherboard that's 25, 6, 7 years old. It works.
Yes. And
Are any of our motherboards going to be working in 20 years?
I'm not completely sure if my motherboard is working right now.
Oh, you have news.
No. But the thing is that sometimes motherboards start to misbehave, and then it fixes itself, and you don't know why. For example, you just turn it on, and nothing happens for 2 minutes, and then it boots up. For no
Memory
particular
timing,
reason.
again.
Or it could be the memory timing. Sometimes it just pops a cursor, and the cursor keeps blinking, and then it starts booting the process.
I've seen that on Z790, yes.
Yes, I don't know why. I would like to have some sort of a feedback that says, okay, please wait, we are working on whatever. we are sorting out the lanes, or we had a traffic accident on the lane 4, whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to
Construction road ahead.
Yes, I want to have some sort of feedback to tell me, okay, right now the motherboard is busy trying to re-establish itself as a motherboard, and then it lost its bearings, it needs to talk to its therapist, so it needs to re-establish itself, it needs some encouragement.
Some zen.
Yes, so, and then it's going to come back.
You have a perfect t-shirt for that, because a couple of days ago I had a discussion with our mutual acquaintance. We were discussing the fact that at no point in the past when C64 or Amiga or Amstrad or whatever given successful load of the game, they never crashed.
This is the thing that I was talking to during the New Year's celebrations, the New Year's holidays. I was talking to a couple of old creators of computer games, and the thing is that what they hate right now is that everybody is shipping a game that is not finished, and then they are waiting for the the first day patch, so 0-day patch. They are waiting for another patch and another patch and another patch, instead of actually having what they had to do beforehand. So before, when you wanted to put your game to the market, you created a master DVD, and then you created DVDs, you printed DVDs. That was
like
it.
vinyls, yeah.
Yes, that was it. If you had problems, so be it, you had problems. You could patch them later, but it was not something that could be done easily. Now everybody is just saying, okay, I'm going to be patching this thing for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And they're expecting when they launch. Actually, in the launch procedure of the new games, they are including the time for the first 2 or 3 weeks after the launch as critical time to do the support when the problems come in. So they are expecting that there is going to be a huge amount of problems, so they're going to be busy working for 2 weeks straight to fix most of those.
So beta testing, and that's that.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you for being with us. This has been an interesting episode, although I must say that I have become a little bit annoyed with the state of the computers themselves. So
this is going to be apparent in the next episode.
No, but it's not only this thing. But the thing is that the motherboards is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
And it's not that the configuration itself is a problem. I think that's the whole outlook on how the hardware and software should look like has become a problem. But more on that in some of the further episodes. See you next time.
See ya. Bye.